Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I want to welcome each and every one of you here today and thank you for taking the time to come and participate in this Open Policy Forum. I think this is a very important day to review where we are and where we've come from, what we're actually doing well, and where, as a country, we need to improve in relation to the whole area of digital safety. This is an open policy debate. And the agenda is being set by all of you as the participants here. And we're looking forward to hearing the contributions from the panellists, but also the contributions, thoughts and ideas from the floor here as well. I want to thank the facilitator, Caroline McKimley, and I particularly want to also thank my ministerial colleagues and their department officials for the assistance that they have provided to us in organising this event. This is very much a whole of government approach, and it will build on, from here we will build on developing an action plan by the summer, a government action plan in relation to this particular issue. I think to show how serious the government is taking this issue, we're delighted to have Taoiseach Leo Varadkar here to give the welcome address. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce Taoiseach. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good morning. And I'd like to start by offering a very sincere and heartfelt Happy International Women's Day to all of the women in the audience. Reasonably gender balanced this morning, so delighted to see that at the very least. I think it's fair to say that a week is a long time in politics, and a lot can change in a week. This time last week, the snow was falling, and in our collective response to that extreme weather, the worst snowstorm in 35 years, if not 70 years, we saw people and organisations at all levels working together to keep us safe. It was and is a great example of how shared effort and effective coordination across government and across society can work. The response also showed that while government and the state has a role to play in ensuring public safety, the state doesn't have all the answers and can never provide all of the solutions. We got through the extreme weather relatively unscathed because citizens exercised common sense, were given clear advice, and by and large followed it. People were advised to stay indoors during the worst of the storm, to avoid unnecessary journeys and so on. And they heeded the advice and kept their families and friends safe and out of harm's way. I believe the state has a duty to keep its citizens safe. However, in the main, as we demonstrated last week, this is best done by providing advice and safeguards, by allowing people to exercise their own common sense, with coercion and prescription being tools of last resort and rarely being the most effective. The same perhaps applies in other areas as well. It's now almost impossible to imagine a world without the internet, but as somebody rapidly approaching 40, I actually do, but I'm increasingly aware that a lot of people don't. And it's almost impossible to imagine a future where the internet has less of a role in our day-to-day lives than it does today. And everyone has their own thoughts as to whether it's for good or ill. I'm very much for the former. I think it's been a good force in the main. But irrespective of one's own perspective, we have to acknowledge that these developments bring real risks. And our role is to manage that risk. We cannot stand like King Canute on the shore and demand that the tide retreat, because it will not. There are bad people offline, and it's no surprise that there are also bad people online. And the internet makes it much easier for them to get together, to get access to each other, and to get access to other people. And there's also an enormous variation in the types of illegal content and harmful activity to be found on the internet. At one end of the spectrum, there's serious criminal content, such as child sex abuse material. However, we also need strategies to deal with harmful content which is not classified as criminal, such as cyberbullying and websites that encourage suicide or anorexia. Similarly, there is a variation in the providers of harmful content. Some are manipulative criminals, others are ordinary users of the internet, and some are children themselves. So our response has to be nuanced to take account of these differences, and our response must also be realistic. Something that works rhetorically or works on paper won't survive an enterprising teenager in many cases, and if so, it's not worth pursuing. So we have to ask ourselves, what's the most appropriate response from government to the range of online risks? Is the answer greater law enforcement? Is it better education of parents and young people in how to stay safe online? Is it more legislation or stricter rules about how businesses behave on the internet? And I think the answer inevitably has to be a mix of these, and perhaps more. And we must also be honest with ourselves. Government action alone will not and cannot remove all risks from the internet. Government on its own cannot act. It needs individuals, parents, educators, industry and law enforcement playing their roles to make the internet a much safer place. And as the internet affects all aspects of our lives, the only approach that will be truly effective is one that involves all stakeholders playing their part. And this, as you know, is a serious issue with an international dimension. Decisions on how we can best provide the kinds of protections we seek requires recognising the global nature of the internet. It is the World Wide Web, after all. It involves ensuring up-to-date legal frameworks are in place, which are fit for purpose in an area that is developing and changing at a rapid speed, often much faster than legislators are capable of legislating. Understanding and recognising the need to develop proportionate, feasible and effective responses to a spectrum of activity from harmful through to criminal activity. Today's event, as you know, has been coordinated by 6 government departments, represented here by 6 ministers. They all have a policy role in relation to online safety. And it's important, we believe, as a government, to be open and to learn from others, both colleagues within government and government departments and agencies, but also those from outside. And as a government, we're committed to developing more open approaches to policy making such as this. So we're going to try to achieve that by including people like you, networks of practitioners, academics, experts in the field, in developing and debating policy options at an early stage. Today's debate is designed so that we can have an open discussion about what Ireland's priorities should be when it comes to online safety. I know you indicated the topics you'd like to see discussed today, and I'm not surprised that at the top of the list of topics was greater education and awareness. A large amount of work is already underway in several government departments and agencies, by the European Union and also by industry and other stakeholders. This was demonstrated recently by the attendance of 4 government ministers at the Joint Oireachtas Committee on Children and Youth Affairs, where they outlined the work already undertaken across government. We need to do more, but we also need to be better at raising awareness of what's already being done. For example, the guidance material that's produced by the Office of Internet Safety, the Be in Control initiative developed for schools by Webwise in conjunction with the Garda Síochána, and of course reporting mechanisms like hotline.ie. I think empowering individuals through awareness and raising initiatives and education to stay safe online is particularly important when legislation might improve impractical or unenforceable in some cases. The role of government, industry and stakeholders is the second most important issue identified by you for your discussion today. So it's important that we consider the role of national governments in making the internet a safer place for children. In this context, it's essential that the work of national governments can align and support the efforts at European level or even international level to promote online safety. And that's why I want to extend a special welcome to Ms. Gail Kent, who I met briefly on the way in. She's the Director of Data Economy at the European Commission, and she will shortly give us an overview on the range of actions that the European Commission is taking in this area. Online safety in this area, for obvious reasons, demands a European approach. I think another important question is the role of industry and what it should do and how it should play a role in supporting online safety. In the long run, I believe that companies can only survive, can only thrive, and can only remain profitable if they enjoy social acceptance. Therefore, surely it's in the best long-term interest of industry to be part of the solution to online safety. And I'm delighted to acknowledge their presence here today and their desire to do that. I think we must also consider how we can work collectively with voluntary organisations, with parents and schools in creating solutions. And we must give particular attention and thought to the role of young people in making the internet safer. Every child in this country is a digital native. It's intrinsic and natural to them in their lives, as electricity was to previous generations. And any initiatives in online safety that don't empower young people, treat them as passive actors, simply won't work in my view. We all know that water is dangerous, and children are taught from a young age to respect it and to be careful around it. But children are also taught to swim, because avoiding water is not the answer. The third issue you identified was regulatory changes, ranging from the digital age of consent to the regulation of online advertising and enhanced regulation of industry. There are significant issues in each of these proposed changes that cut across the full range of government departments represented here today. There are some reasons why an open policy debate is the most appropriate forum to discuss the various ideas and debate their merits or otherwise in a reasoned way. So to conclude, I want to thank you all very much for taking time out to be here today, to participate in what I hope will be a number of open policy debates in a number of different areas. And I particularly want to thank Minister Naughten for his leadership in promoting a cross-government response to internet safety and for making today's event happen. The report of today's deliberations will shape that work, and it's our intention as a government by the end of June to set out an action plan for an integrated set of actions and measures which we will use to improve online safety at all levels. So thank you once again, and I wish you a very successful and productive discussion this morning.